Hello, Rufus King Nation. This is Anthony Lauer, art and design teacher at Rufus King High School, and you're listening to The King's Cast, a podcast introducing our listeners to the men and women working each day to teach the next generation of Rufus King Generals. Today, we're talking about language and literature with Josh Anderson, the department chair and avid Shakespeare lover. We'll also discuss how the International Baccalaureate Program aims to develop King students into inquiring, knowledgeable, and caring individuals who strive to create a better and more peaceful world. Thanks for taking a few minutes to listen today. All right, good morning. This is Mr. Lauer here with Josh Anderson, one of our English teachers here at Rufus King. Sir, good morning and welcome. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you.
If you could just let us know what subject or department you work for and what are some of the classes you teach.
I currently teach English, ninth grade English, and I've actually taught that class since I came here 8 years ago. And I also teach juniors in the DP literature class.
Wonderful.
Yep.
So what brought you to Rufus King 8 years ago?
I was sort of transitioning. I had left the district I taught in for a decade, and I landed at a different MPS school for 1 year, but it was pretty clear that that wasn't a good fit for me. It was just a place I needed to get to another teaching job. And that spring, then there were a number of English positions open in the district, and the way the district interviews, current teachers get the first round of interviews. So I interviewed at a number of 3 or 4 English positions in the district and got offered a spot in all of them. And I talked to a couple current employees here, and I knew someone at another school that I was sort of bound down to too, and King seemed to be the right fit for me.
Wonderful. That story is very similar to mine. I had done 8 years in a suburban school and needed a change, and again, applied at the district. They had numerous job openings, and they offered me King, and I had grown up in Milwaukee knowing the stories of King, and that brought me here. So I only bring it up because of the similarities.
Yeah, what I found right away, and I think what told me that I had made the right choice, even my first year here, I got some King gear and would be out and about in the town, and pretty much everywhere I went wearing a King sweatshirt or a King hat, someone would comment, "Oh, I went to school there," or "My uncle went to school there," or my daughter goes to school there, or "I went to school there," right? And so it was pretty clear just what an important institution King was and is in Milwaukee.
There's a phenomenal proud legacy within this city, and I think it helps propel us forward through the decades and how we've been around for almost 90 years this building is. I was on a family vacation as well in Vancouver, Canada, walking through Stanley Park, and I had a King shirt on, and I was stopped on the other side of the continent in another country because a King grad recognized my shirt and wanted to talk shop. It's phenomenal what we can find out there.
I have a similar, closer to home, but perhaps wider in time. My wife and I were in Door County the summer we got married. We'd gone up earlier that summer with the kids, and we stopped at a diner in Sturgeon Bay, and I was wearing a cut-off King soccer shirt. And before the door shut, I heard someone say, "Let's go Generals!" And the gentleman in the diner, in the booth that he had said that, graduated in 1938 from Rufus King.
Damn.
And we spent a good 10 minutes talking about,
never ceases to amaze me.
1938.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got one of the books from Mr. Zaber that is the first 10 years of the school newspaper.
Sure.
And it's in large format, and to see the old ads and to see the pictures, that legacy's here, and the city knows it. How do you incorporate IB into your content area, or what is one aspect of the IB that you connect with?
Well, I teach, one of the 2 English classes I teach is the DP literature class, and so that's, sort of the first IB English class, right? There are other ones, Lang and Lit and Performance, but I think the first IB English class, DP level, was literature. So it's, I don't so much incorporate it into my content area as it is, right, my content area for my juniors. And, with my freshman class, what I like about that is just the ability to point out, I think the idea of interconnectivity, right? That the stories we're reading, the things we're talking about, are the same stories that they're reading in South America, that they're reading in Africa, that they're reading in New Zealand, right, in Asia. And they might be different titles by different authors, but we're all part of the same story.
The human experience, that interconnectivity, or the red line that connects between us.
So, and I think English, perhaps in a way that art does too, lends itself to a certain universality of story and of experience, right? We can see ourselves, and we can see each other, and we can see the other, and understand that other is us.
It reminds me of subbing in your class a couple weeks ago and seeing the beautiful artwork that you have on the walls that talk about, I believe it's just quotes from different stories, but that idea that visual and that narrative can be merged together to enhance a person's ability to connect with the story or the characters. In your classes, do you have a favorite unit, topic, or project that you teach?
I mean, but certainly when my students are done with me as juniors, right, when they finish their junior, and if you were to talk to kids who had me last year or 2 years ago, right, Mr. Henderson loves his Shakespeare, and that's true, right, and that might seem kind of like narrow, here's a dead white Englishman, but even soon after he died, right, one of the famous quotes about him was that he was not for one generation, but for all time, right? And so we start the junior year studying Hamlet, because I think it really allows the kids to see how much of Western literature comes back to Shakespeare, and his characters, his ideas are pretty universal. So have we had arguments with family? Yes. Have we struggled with questions of who am I, and what should I be doing right now? Right? Have we struggled with questions of power and balance, and conflicts about how to make it? It allows us to ask a lot of big human nature questions,
especially that teenagers have on their mind as they continue growing, developing, and finding their own path in this world.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. For parents and students out there, what advice do you have about being successful at Rufus King?
Well, it's a rigorous school, right? It's a rigorous, and with our IB curriculum, one of our foundational identities is a college preparatory school. Now, what college looks like now is very different and more diverse than what college looked like 20 years ago, 40 years ago.
Not just those attending, but those teaching, the content areas that are taught, the classes and majors that you can get.
But as I tell my students, right, I don't think you're going to find a job anywhere in which critical thinking, speaking, being able to take ideas and distill them down to their essence, being able to communicate well, right? Being able to put your thoughts in words and spoken and written. Whether or not that's getting you ready for a 4-year college or a 2-year college or work right after high school. Those sort of basic skills are essential regardless. But I think parents, students need to understand that it's there's homework, there's work, right? If you want to be successful at King, right, then you have to be ready for that work and know that us as teachers, we're going to work with you, but there's an expectation too of effort, of attempt, right? We're certainly going to help all the students, but we want them at the same time to learn how to help themselves.
Almost a meet halfway kind of thing. It's no more sage on the stage as much as a collaboration between student and teacher with the content in the middle.
I think most teachers, I don't like to speak for anyone but myself. So I think for myself, I don't need you to meet me halfway, right? Because that's a pretty arbitrary line. I just want to know that you want to try and learn, right? It's okay that we make mistakes, right? It's okay that we make missteps, that we you might get a bad grade on something, but the learning, the process of learning, right? So, I just want to see that spark, right? And we'll figure it out together.
Excellent. Now, I have to admit that I did not look up the content standards for which I wanted the next question to be, but could you pick one of the content standards for English in the IB that you could talk about today? I, again, apologize for not having had that prepared.
Mr. Anderson, poetry, right? There's no right answer to poetry, right? This poem could mean anything. Well, no, it can't, right? That poem is not about, the independence of Ireland. So, I think the idea of interpretation, evaluation and interpretation, right? There's nuance and multiple messages and meanings in text and in stories and narrative. And certainly things can be more than one thing, can mean more than one thing. And we bring our own lenses to any text that we're looking at. So I want my students to feel comfortable analyzing and interpreting. But what I'm trying to teach them is that's fine. I'm intrigued by this idea. Now show me how you take this text and get me to this idea.
Okay.
Right? How do you analyze
show me your work
it?
in
How
math
do you
class.
interpret it? And what are the steps that you say that show me that this, color symbolizes freedom, say, right? So analysis and interpretation, right? That's a pretty important content standard, specific, large umbrella.
That you apply to the units. Excellent. Do you have any closing thoughts, a quote, or a book recommendation that you'd like to leave our listeners with? I mean, we've already heard about Shakespeare today, so
yeah. So let me pick a Shakespeare tangent. I just finished watching and had read previously Emily St. John Mandel's book called Station 11.
Okay.
Now, I'm a pretty voracious reader, and one of my favorite genres
Is
from when I started reading.
futures?
Well, was science fiction, right? And a lot of science fiction deals with, what might happen, right? And so Station 11 is about 20 years after, and this is pretty topical, after a flu has wiped out a lot of the Earth's population, and the story is non-chronological, so it jumps back in time between the now when the pandemic hits and 20 years later. But it predominantly focuses on a traveling symphony traveling a circle around the Great Lakes, and they perform Shakespeare. So, right,
well, you can find that, I believe, on Apple TV.
The show is HBO.
HBO, okay.
And then, but the book it was based on, is about 8 years old now. So Station 11, Emily St. John Mandel.
Yeah. Well, great recommendation. I heard some interviews with the main actress. She was in *Halt and Catch Fire*.
Yeah,
and I believe
Mackenzie
one
Davis.
of the Terminator movies.
She the most recent one, and she was in *The Martian* as well.
Yeah. Thank you so very much for your time today, sir. I appreciate it, and have a good rest of your year.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hello, Rufus King Nation builders. I wanted to say thank you for taking the time today to listen to our first King's Cast podcast, introducing our community to the staff working daily in the halls of Rufus King High School to support our student generals. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation about analyzing and evaluating literature with Josh Anderson, 9th grade and 11th grade language and literature teacher. After today's conversation, I know who I will team up with if we ever find ourselves in a post-apocalyptic world and need to build back our collective humanity through the arts. That said, please join us again next month as we sit down with another Rufus King staff member to discuss how they bring the International Baccalaureate to life in their classrooms.